Hello and welcome to the Shiny Bees podcast, a podcast for those who like their knitting, comedy and yarn in equally large measures. I'm your host, Jo Mulwine, and this is episode 69, Socks Yeah, an interview with Rachel Coopey.
I feel a need to laugh again with you, if that's alright. I need a drink, I need a friend.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Shiny Bees podcast. I hope you're all well since last time I spoke to you and that you're all having a lovely knitty time in the past week or so. I've been doing a little bit of knitting myself, even if I do say so myself, and enjoying some Fair Isle. I know, check my bad self out. So things are progressing well at Shiny HQ, Shiny Heights as we call it. Currently what we call Shiny Heights wants to move because we won't be on top of a hill anymore. And only a week to go until we move. It's all getting a little bit exciting now, shall we say. But I'm sure it will be fine. I'm a little bit less excited about doing a 400-mile drive on my own with 2 dogs and 2 kids. But you know, won't be the first time I've done it. And I'm sure Peppa Pig and her merry band of crazy cartoon pals will keep them suitably entertained, as will a couple of hours off lead in the soft play halfway down. I think should be the key to success. So what have you been up to? Thank you for getting in touch, all of those you have got in touch with me since the last episode. I love to hear from you as always, and if you have sent in any questions for Alice from Whistlebear to answer, she's going to be answering them this week, so you need to be sharp. It's tomorrow night, I think. Yes, tomorrow evening she's going to answer all of the questions we've had, so you've got to be quick if you want to get your questions in for her to answer on the next episode about mohair. Also, thank you to everyone who has got in touch thanking me for reminding them about the kid silk hairs in their stash and indeed encouraging them to get it out. I don't have any Rowan Kid Silk Haze in my stash, nor do I have any Debbie Bliss Party Angel or equivalent, but I have been having a good look through my sock yarns. I have got a bit of a de-stash ongoing on Ravelry. That doesn't contain any mohair containing yarns, unfortunate for you guys, but I do have quite a few yarns that have some mohair in, including a very cool self-stripe, so I might cast those on. They could be my moving socks perhaps. Not sure. I've got 2 lots of that. Might knit some for Millie, might knit him some, I don't know, not decided yet. But as and when you do try your mohair yarns, or indeed find some comedy mohair in your stash somewhere or generally out and about, then snap a picture and send it to me. I do love it. I do love a bit of mohair banter. It's all good fun. So what have I got for you today? Well, I have an interview. The interviews appear to be very popular over summer. We've had a few episodes of just me blatting on, shall we say, and it's time to have some friends into the studio. And this week I'm delighted to welcome Rachel Coopey to the show. For those of you who are not familiar with Rachel, she is a British knitwear designer and the author of 5 books to date and counting. She's a big lover of socks, and socks is definitely one of her main things that she does, having written 3 of her books on the subject of socks and having collaborated most kind of famously with Joy of the Knitting Goddess, who is a UK indie dyer, for those of you that don't know. She's one of the kind of long-standing indie dyers and one of my personal favourites. She has also agreed to come on to the show, so I'll arrange that so you can chat to her in due course. But you can find her over at the knittinggoddess.co.uk in the meantime. But Rachel has collaborated with her for the past few years on various themed sock clubs, annual sock clubs. She is going to be collaborating with Joy again this year, and I will put a link to that in the show notes for you to go and check out, along with our very own Claire. So Claire, who was co-hosting the sock surgery, Claire Devine, is also going to be designing some socks for Joy. So if you're a fan of Claire's work, again, Joy's your lady. Joy's the lady to speak to. Rachel is also a designer of accessories, particularly hats, and has designed for a number of other UK indie dyers such as Fiberspace and Kettle Yarn Company most recently, as well as a vast array of knitting magazines and publications worldwide. She's prolific in her designing. She's got 218 designs on Ravelry at the moment, and from the sounds of things during the interview, it's not going to be long before she's got even more designs on there. If you like socks with interesting texture, if you like socks that are kind of a fraternal pair where the design details are sort of fiddled with between one sock and the other in some clever way to make them more interesting, if you like a good colourwork hat, then I defy you to not find anything within her back catalogue that you would love to knit. She is a very interesting and funny lady as well, as I'm sure you'll hear during the interview. And settle yourselves down, get yourself a nice sock whip and a big steaming mug of tea, and we will crack on with the show. Rachel, thank you very much for agreeing to come onto the podcast. It's lovely to have you with us.
Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. So, for those of you who aren't, those of us who aren't familiar with you, I clearly need a gin already. Can you tell us a little bit about you as a person and about how you came to be interested in yarny pursuits?
I am a knitwear designer. I live in Worcester in the United Kingdom. I learned to knit when I was about 4 or 5, probably. My grandma taught me. I knit a lot of garter stitch squares that didn't really have any purpose. But she used to knit a lot of jumpers for everybody in the family, really. And I sort of took up knitting every time I went to stay with her. I sort of rediscovered it. And then when I was about 16, I knit a very, very long, it wasn't all garter stitch. It probably would have been better if it was, but a very, very long scarf that rolled in on itself and was pretty much unwearable, but I've still got it. And then when I was about 21, 22, I rediscovered knitting and never really stopped then. And I've been designing knitwear for about 8 years now.
Oh, super. I love that your granny taught you as well. It's awesome. All the best people get taught by their grannies.
Yeah, I mean, my mum's a very good knitter too, and she helped me out along the way as well. But yeah, my earliest memories of knitting are definitely with my grandma.
Lovely. So what was the tipping point then that turned an almost unwearable scarf and a hobby into more of a business venture?
My degree is in jewelry design. So I was doing jewelry design and working as a jewelry designer. And after I had my first child, it wasn't really the commute wasn't really doable anymore. So I wasn't doing that anymore. And a lot of the skills that I learned being a jewelry designer were easily transferable to knitwear design. So I kind of just applied those principles to my knitting. And I had an idea for a few sock patterns, and I approached Joy of the Knitting Goddess to see if she wanted to work with me on a club, and she did, and we've been doing that ever since. So I think next year will be our 6th year of that. Might be the 7th. I'm not sure. So yeah, that's how it started, with an idea for a couple of sock patterns, and then it went well. So I said we could do a few more, and then we've never really stopped since then.
Yeah, I was just trying to think then when you were saying, and I got a load of the Discworld.
Yeah.
patterns and yarns, and I was trying to think what year that was, and it must have been like 2012. Was it, or 2011 even? No, 2012. It must have been.
might have been a little bit earlier than that.
Really?
Yeah, I
Wow.
think that was the second year that we did. It might have been 2011. Yeah, I'm not sure, but yeah, that was the second when we did the Discworld inspired ones. That was the second full year of the sock club that we did.
Wow.
So yeah, that was a while ago.
You need to release that stash.
Yeah,
And you're doing one with her again this year, aren't you? Has she just
yeah,
announced that?
yeah. We're doing six. I'm doing six patterns for her next year, and they are all inspired by Yorkshire. She's based in Harrogate in Yorkshire, and Rachel Atkinson is who writes the blog My Life in Knitwear, I think it is doing recipes to go along with the patterns. So that's really exciting too. So yeah, all the details for that I think you can find on the Knitting Goddess site.
Super. I will be putting a link in the show notes in the hope that everyone else buys them first and I don't have to succumb to the new range of Discworld colours she announced last week.
Yes, yeah, yeah. She's a very clever lady.
She is. She's a very, very good dye. One of my all-time favourites, definitely. So what does a typical day look like for you then, Rachel?
Um, in a sort of perfect world, I sort of managed to get all the admin side of things done in the morning. All pack all the orders for books and things, and then do more sort of knitting of samples and swatches and things in the afternoon. So that's what I aim for. Whether that is actually what happens or not does depend on what else is happening around me. But I try and do all my admin and answer my emails in the morning, and then do the more creative side of things in the afternoon. Sometimes it doesn't work that way. If I'm on a deadline, I might knit all day, but otherwise, if there's a full email box, I might answer emails all day. That's what I try and do.
Can you tell us about your creative process then? Talking about you kind of your design work in the afternoons and things. Can you talk us through your creative process when you design a new design?
I probably usually start with a piece of paper and a pencil, whether it's drawing out a shape of something or how I want a pattern to look, or I might start just doodling a chart, a cable chart or a lace chart, and then once I think it might look okay when it's knitted, I'll do a swatch, or sometimes if it's a sock design, I'll just cast on the number of stitches I think is going to work for the sock, and work a swatch in the round that might actually turn into not a swatch. It might actually turn into the sock if you're lucky. I don't often start with the yarn and nothing on the paper. My brain doesn't really work like that. So yeah, quite often I start with sketching something out. And then I might as I'm sort of sketching, it might go off in a few different tangents. I might end up with 3 or 4 different things to try when I pick up the yarn, or things to come back to later. Yeah, so that's how it works really. And then once you try and swatch it, or start knitting it, if you're lucky, it might work for the first time. More often than not, you have to rip it out several times before you get something that you're happy with. But yeah, mostly that's the way I do it. I might look at if I haven't got something particular in mind that I've thought about previously, I might look at swatches that I've made before, or go through old sketchbooks and have a look at stuff that might not have been knitted up yet, or have a look through some. I've got a few sort of reference books that aren't knitting books, that are just books of pictures or what I would call sort of coffee table books, sort of big books full of pictures of architecture or art or sort of natural history, that you can look for sort of pleasing lines and things like that.
Was that, do you think, process driven by the way you approach jewellery design, or has it changed when you moved from jewellery design to knitwear design?
I think, yeah, it's probably the same process. And I think that there's definite similarities to the way that I work with knitting that I used to work when I used to work with jewellery. I think the designs that I do are all, not all, but in the whole, usually quite small, quite intricate, and I think that probably comes from my background somewhat, probably.
And has that changed? Because you've just brought out your own yarn line.
Yeah.
How was that different to designing knitwear when you were developing that yarn line?
It was different in that usually if I'm putting together a palette for a collection or a book, then I choose from existing yarns, and I might have an idea of a colour that I want, and then I have to find it in somebody's yarn range. But to sit down and choose a range of colours yourself is something quite different to anything that I've ever done before, and it was a lot of fun, but it was a lot of pressure. It was quite a scary thing to do. And Jenny from Fibre Space helped me a lot, because she's obviously done it before, and she was sort of there to stop me choosing 7 out of 10 of the colours to different shades of yellow, because not everybody loves yellow as much as me. But yeah, it was a lot of fun, and I'm hoping that I get to do more of it in the future. But it was definitely different to anything I've ever done before.
Oh, it sounds really interesting. And you do definitely need someone to kind of save you from your own taste in colours sometime. I reckon mine would have looked like a toddler's paint box, definitely.
Yeah, I think it's definitely, sometimes when you go to a yarn shop, you can see that the owner or whoever's doing the buying leans in one direction as far as colours are concerned, and I think that's a very easy thing to do, is to think that the colours that you really like are the colours that everybody really likes, and that's not necessarily the case.
Disappointingly.
Yeah, everybody should love yellow as much as I do, but sadly that isn't the case.
Oh, okay then. So, no journey's ever a smooth one, and running a business has its ups and downs. Can you think about a time when things maybe didn't quite go to plan? What happened, and what did you learn as a result of it?
I did the book that I did with the Rowan Fine Art yarn, for Quail, which is my only non-self-published book. I wouldn't so much say it wasn't it definitely wasn't a mistake, and they were great to work with, and I really enjoyed it, but it was very different to the way that I had worked before self-publishing books and have worked since self-publishing books. And I don't think I'd necessarily say I'll never do a book that isn't self-published, but I feel like at this point I'm definitely more comfortable self-publishing, and getting to make all the decisions. So yeah, I don't necessarily think that I would have done that differently, though. I don't think, a lot of the time I try not to think about things that you would do differently so much as, okay, I did that, and this is what happened when I did that, and maybe in the future I should do it slightly differently, and my life will be a little bit easier. But yeah, I try not to think too much about that I shouldn't have done things that I've done, and just learn from things and move on. And I think that happens almost without you knowing that it's happened. You think about doing things slightly differently in the future. I don't know. I try to be, on the whole, quite a positive person and not think too much that things went wrong. Just think, that was interesting. maybe maybe I won't enjoy that if it happens again. So I'll do something slightly different to stop it.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's one of those things, isn't it? I mean, everyone kind of thinks, oh, well, I would love to work on a collection with a big yarn house. And actually, not everyone is suited to that. And some people like to have more creative control or total creative control or an entire book of yellow socks of their own
Yeah.
over a project. It's just part of your personality, isn't it? And trying it and thinking, well, actually, I really like running my own show and doing it my own way
Yeah.
is a good thing to learn, I think.
Yeah, and I definitely, don't tempt me. I'm, too many people say you should do a book of entirely yellow socks. Then
I totally think you should. I really do. You know what? If you love yellow, do a book of yellow socks. It's only like these people who do all the grey stuff. I never used to like grey until they all started going on about it.
And do you know what? I do love grey as well. Grey is one of my favourites, but 50 Shades has just ruined it for me.
Oh yeah.
I can't even go there. But yeah, maybe in the future you'll see an entire book of yellow socks. That would be, maybe I'll put that on my, in my 10-year plan.
You heard it here first, people. And as a complete aside, what did you think of the Rowan Fine Art sock yarn to use? Because I was talking about sock yarns with mohair last week on the podcast, and that was one of the bases I talked about.
Yeah, I love it. I think it's great. I think it's a really nice blend. I wasn't wild about the colours that they did originally, because they were all quite variegated. And when you're doing sort of quite complicated patterns, variegation like that can be quite tricky and can hide a lot of the detail that you're spending quite a lot of time putting in.
Yeah.
But the new solid colours that they've brought out now, I think, are great, and I think it's a lovely yarn to knit with. And I think it's a really interesting blend. And I think, putting mohair in sock yarn is a really good idea. It adds strength. So they're gonna be hard wearing, and that yarn was really lovely to knit with. It made lovely socks and other things as well. It's great for shawls. It's got a lovely drape, and great stitch definition. So I think the new solid colours that they brought out a few months ago, I think, yeah, they're right up my alley. I've got a few skeins.
All yellow.
I don't know if there is a yellow actually, but they've got a really lovely green, which is sort of a close second to my favourite yellow. And there's a really nice blue, I think, and a grey. There's a nice grey, I think, if I'm remembering correctly. But yeah, I really like it as a sock yarn. I think it's a great. I think it's got a bit of silk in it as well, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's nice, really nice.
Super. I've just had this random idea about how you're going to publish your yellow socked book, and on one side it'll be all yellow versions, and then like when you get those books and it's a different language when you turn it over.
Oh yeah.
But it'll all be grey. Same socks, just grey.
Well, grey and yellow is a great combination. So
is.
maybe that's
there you go. You can have that one for free.
Well, if I do it, I'll give you a credit in the acknowledgements.
You're a superstar, thank you. So taking it from my random rabbit hole there and a learning experience and up to the high point of your journey, what has that been? That big kind of massive, amazing, I can't believe this happened point so far?
I don't. Every day I think that I'm really lucky to do what I do, to do, to have a job that I really love. I love going to shows and meeting people. Sometimes I get to meet like other designers and people that I think are really great, and they actually know who I am, and that's pretty amazing. yeah, just when people sort of see me at shows or at events and they're wearing a pair of socks that I've designed, that's always great. I was having breakfast the other day and in a cafe, and somebody came up to me and um, showed me their socks, which to it like
I love that.
probably was quite weird to a lot of other people that were eating in the cafe, but I think I really enjoy it when that happens. That's one of my favorite things. So yeah, if you're coming to see me, then show me some socks. I always really enjoy that. Um, or hats or anything else. um, but yeah, I mean, even when I'm having a terrible day, and nothing's going right, and I'm generally in a bad mood, which doesn't actually happen that often, but sometimes when I have when I'm, you know, whatever the saying is, when she was good, she was very, very good, and when she was bad, she was awful. Yeah, if I'm in a bad mood, it's pretty awful, and I still think, how incredibly lucky I am to do what I love every day. And I know a lot of people don't get to do that, and I do really appreciate anybody who supports me and enables, and helps me to be able to do that. So yeah. No, I can't think of one huge moment where I was really, really happy, but I am really, really happy most days.
That's got to be a good thing, surely.
Well, I'd like to think so, yeah.
So, what one thing that you know now then did you wish you had known when you picked up the first ball of yarn?
Huh. That I wish I'd have known that none of it is permanent. So you can make as many mistakes as you like and redo it. And I think that's something that I've learned over the last few years, that I think we should tell more beginner knitters that it doesn't matter if they make mistakes. And also I think that things aren't always as hard as you think they're going to be, and we shouldn't attach a lot of difficulty to certain techniques, because I think people get put off. People get an idea in their head that a particular technique is very, very difficult, and so they put off trying it, or they don't they avoid it for a long time. And I think knitting is just knits and purls and variations on knits and purls, and it's really, really fascinating to me what people find difficult or what people think is difficult, because it's always different things. So you'll meet somebody who'll think lace is really tricky, but they've got absolutely no problems doing really intricate cables, and the other way around, people who think cabling is really complicated, but they'll knit amazing lace shawls. And then short rows is another one. And I think the thing is with short rows, they're quite difficult to explain verbally, a lot simpler to do. And stranded colourwork, when I came back to knitting, I didn't realise that a lot of people thought stranded colourwork was quite tricky. So I think the second project that I did was a pair of stranded hand warmers, just because I ordered some wool, and they sent a pattern along with it for these stranded arm warmers, and I just thought, okay, well, I'll do that next then. And then I've met amazing knitters who've been knitting for years and years and years, who've always thought that stranded colourwork is difficult and complicated, and that they couldn't possibly manage it. So I would encourage people just to give things a go. And I've learned that nothing is complicated, as complicated as you think it is. It's all doable. You can do anything that you want to do in knitting and crochet. I've just learned to crochet, and got a newfound respect for what it's like to be a beginner at something. because I'm really not competent or comfortable doing it, but I really love doing it. I think it's really amazing and can be really beautiful, um, and it's great to do something involving yarn that isn't work because knitting always turns into work.
No, I think you're definitely right in terms of it's almost like urban myths for knitters. It's that, oh, I couldn't possibly do steeking.
Yeah,
That's horrendously difficult and scary. And
yeah,
beaded knitting. I'm not, and and I'm very much a kind of person that goes, just have a go at it. Really, how hard you
yeah,
think it is in your head? It's really, you get there and you go, is that it?
yeah. And I think we sort of pick up cues from all over the place. So, you might overhear somebody saying it's difficult, or somebody, in your group of friends or in your knitting group might say, oh yeah. And I think things get passed along like that, and the idea that certain things are difficult gets passed along as well. And I think we should all be a little bit more adventurous. Because what's the worst that can happen? You just have to unknit it and wind it back into a ball and try again. I'm not saying that everybody should enjoy every technique, but I think everybody should if they want to do something or they think they might like to do it, then they should give it a go.
Yeah, definitely. And sometimes it's just about knowing the right little cheats and the right little kind of workarounds. And once you know those, like once you discover the power of a lifeline and stitch
Yeah,
markers in lace knitting, you're fine. And I mean, I learned that in my very first lace project. So I was like, why is everyone moaning about this? It can't be that hard. But if they don't know about it, I bet it
yeah,
is hard. I bet it is
yeah,
really hard.
yeah,
So it's just about knowing the cheats as well, I think.
yeah.
Desert island skeins, then. If you were going to be marooned on a desert island, and we're assuming that you know you're going to be marooned because we're going to plan to pack some yarn, if you could only take one skein or ball of yarn with you, which one would you take and why?
Oh, maybe one skein.
One skein
Um,
or
okay,
ball.
or ball. Okay, probably ball miser then because it comes in 150 grams
I
skeins,
like your style.
so you get more. So you probably squeeze two pairs of socks out of one skein if you were a little bit careful. So probably, yeah, I'd take a skein of ball miser sock. The twin, I think, is the one with nylon in. I think I'd take that.
Good choice. I'm loving your work there. So, what's your favourite or your go to resource for yarn craft or for business that you couldn't do without?
Um, well, I've just from a business point of view, I've just started using Zero to do my accounting, and that's making my life a lot easier. Um, as far as invoicing and keeping track of invoices and keeping track of payments and bills and things like that. So I would recommend, and I know there are other sort of accounting programs out there that will do a similar thing. So, but I would say if you're doing your own accounts, then or you want to keep track of your own accounts, then some sort of software like that is probably a good idea. Um, Saves a lot of time. As far as knitting go, there are still there are some blogs that I sort of read every time they're updated. I Rachel Atkinson's Life in Knitwear one is one of my favourites. Kate Davies' blog is brilliant and amazing, and she takes great photos and writes extremely well. And the Yarn Harlot,
She's funny, eh?
she's great. Yeah, I mean, yeah, and I think probably hers is the blog that I've been reading the longest. Um, yeah, she's great. And Clara Parks also writes really beautiful posts, but also books. Like Clara Parks books, I think are really really lovely and like almost like um, the closest that you can come to having a conversation in written form. I don't. she's got a very approachable way of writing, I think, that makes you feel like you're actually sat talking to her. But yeah, I think those are the things that I would say.
Lovely. I'll put some links to those in the show notes for the listeners. So, where can the listeners find you? Where's the best place to come looking for you on the internet or in real life if they have some socks they'd like to show you?
My website is www.coopknits.co.uk, and that has links to my blog and my shop. And you can quite often find me on Twitter and Instagram as Coop Knits on both those places. I really like Instagram. It's like, I feel like it's like little tiny mini blogs when I post. In person, I don't think I've got anything for the rest of the. I'll be at Unravel in Farnham in February, and at the Edinburgh Yarn Festival. So if you're going to either of those places next year, then please come and show me your socks.
Super. I'm going to have to knit some now. I've got a cuff knitted of some octarine socks and that's it.
Oh, I love that one.
I know, I've got till next year. Should be fine. Lovely. So, do you have any words of advice for those who would like to get into the knitting industry?
I don't know, really. That's really tricky. That's probably the hardest question I've ever been asked. I mean, it's a difficult thing to do. I think it's more difficult now than it was when I started. But I think if you sort of work hard and if you talk to people, build up relationships with customers and knitters, then I mean that's really tricky, because I don't think there's a sort of, I think it's like anything, you just have to sort of find your way, and there's no sort of, it's not there's no one size fits all approach to it, really. A lot of people have a lot of different approaches, and a lot of people run very different, a lot of knitwear designers run very different businesses and have very different approaches to it, and I don't think there's necessarily one wrong or right way of doing it. But I would just say be yourself, I think. Yeah, don't try and fit into yours or anybody else's model of what you think you should do, and just, I hate to use the word authentic because it's so overused and kind of feels like marketing speak. But I do think probably, be yourself would be my best piece of advice.
It's good advice. A lot of people say just be yourself, do it your own way. Don't try and be what you think everyone else wants you to be.
Yeah, and I think another part of that is to not worry too much about what other people are doing.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and do what you want to do, and not what you think you should be doing because other people are doing it, because everybody's going to do it a different way, and like I said, that there isn't one right way and one wrong way to do it. And I think it's very easy to get sort of caught up in looking at what other people are doing, and all that and the time that you spend doing that, you could be doing something a lot more productive.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. It is absolutely true. It doesn't do your confidence any good if you're just going to sit there worrying and thinking, oh, well, maybe I should be doing that instead. It's just carve your own path.
Yeah. And I think, you know, everybody's success in this industry makes us all stronger. I don't think, you know, just because somebody else they haven't taken that success, there isn't a sort of a finite amount of success to share around. I think, I think just at the risk of sounding cliche, you do you. Don't worry too much about what everyone else is doing.
Sound advice. So let's get excited then. What is next for you? What can we look forward to that's going to come from Coop Knits?
Okay, so the next book that I do will be a sock book with my new yarns, and I'm working on that at the moment, and I'm quite excited about it. I hope everyone else will like it. That's one of the worst things about doing what I do, is that you look at things for a long time before other people get to see them, and you can do a lot of worrying about things in that time. But so the next book that I do will be a sock book using my yarn, and that will be early next year, so early 2016. So that will be exciting. And I'm also working on a project with John Arbon with their sock yarns, which will probably happen before that, actually. So that will be the very next thing. They've got a couple of great sock yarns, and we're working on doing a few patterns for their yarns. So that will be probably even earlier in the new year.
Oh wow, you're a busy lady. Because you've only just sent out Toasty 2, haven't you? I'm going to say it's still quite new.
It is, but I was working on that a long time ago. There's a time delay, and not a time delay, but when a book comes out, I was working on those designs maybe up to a year in advance. So, I have to remember to talk about it, because in my head that's really old, but it's not. It's brand new. It's just come out. So if you want to have a look at that, all the details of that are on my website. But that's a collection of hats and accessories using Baramu Titus yarn, which I love. That's just come out. So that'll be hopefully people will be knitting hats and mittens and cowls to keep themselves warm, just as it starts to get cold now, I think, in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, definitely. I think I did mention it in a couple of episodes ago from Yarndale.
Yes.
The book, so we've definitely linked to that before and mentioned it, but I will link to it again, obviously, in the spirit of true enabling.
So we launched it at Yarndale. Yarndale's a great show. I really enjoy it. And it's great to have something new to show people when you go to shows like that. It's really, really good fun.
Oh, lovely. Well, thank you very much for agreeing to come onto the show, Rachel.
Oh, you're welcome.
It was lovely to have you. So, a big thank you to Rachel for coming on for that interview, and it does stop a little bit abruptly because we recorded a little bit more audio about socks in particular, which I will be putting in next week's episode. And Rachel and I will be discussing knitting socks for men and men who knit socks, and some ideas and thoughts around that, which was really good fun, and that will be coming next week. But in the meantime, Rachel would like you all to be toasty, as it's going to get cold reasonably soon, especially if you're in the northern hemisphere. If you're in the southern hemisphere, sit easy, you're fine, you're going to be nice and warm. And she's very kindly offered a copy of Toasty Volume 2 as a giveaway prize. So if you would like to win a copy of this, go over to the group on Ravelry and leave a comment in the giveaway thread for this episode saying which of the accessories / hats from Toasty 2 you would like to knit first. And we will close entries on that in 2 weeks today, so that'll be the 10th of November at midnight. We will close entries on that. So to win a copy of Toasty Volume 2, head over to Ravelry and I'll put a link in the show notes. But for those of you who don't read the show notes, the group is Shiny Bees Podcast. So I'm afraid that is all we have time for this week. Just before we go, I wanted to say thank you to those of you that have already filled in the listener survey. Particularly those of you who I was able to recognise who had actually answered said survey from their answers, including the one that said I wasn't that funny, which I thought was hilarious, and and the one who asked for cake, just more cake in general, just cake. That was the answer to most questions, and I'm totally on board with that. You know, what is life if you can't have a little bit more cake? So thank you to those of you that have taken the time to fill in that survey for me. I'm just trying to figure out what kind of stuff you guys are going to want for next year, or if there's any gaps in what I am offering to you in terms of content, or what other things you would like around the podcast, and if there is interest in some kind of separate business style offering or tips on kind of productivity and all that kind of exciting jazz stuff that I do when I'm not podcasting with other people. It occurred to me that some of you guys might want some of that, really. And it's just thinking about where we can go next year and how the podcast can grow and improve on what we've already got so far. I've got loads of ideas. All the answers that I've had so far have been really, really helpful. So thank you very much for that. And of course, for everyone that does fill in the survey, I'll put you into a random draw with the random number generator of good fortune, which isn't entirely random because it is a computer, but is as close to random as you can get on the internet, to win a couple of prizes. I've got a copy of, is it Scrumptious Knits? I've tidied it away, it's normally out on the side. The Carol Feller collection for Fiberspace, got a copy of that to give away. I'll find some bits of yarn and some other stuff to throw in there as well. So you can find a link to that in the show notes, and pop over. It's a Google form, and just crack on really, and let me know what you think. So all that's left for me to say then is I hope you all have a really lovely week. Happy crafting, and I will, next time I speak to you properly live on the day, will be sometime in late November. All of the other podcast episodes are lined up ready to go, so it'll feel like quite a long time. So I will speak to you all again soon. Bye. You've been listening to the Shiny Bees Podcast, a podcast for those who like their knitting, comedy and yarn in equally large measures. If you'd like to get in contact with me, you can do so via the blog, or I'm Shiny Bees on Ravelry, Instagram, Twitter, Pinterest and Facebook. You can email me at shinybeesinfo@gmail.com. Music for this episode is provided by Music Alley, and it is Adam and the Walter Boys and I Need a Drink.
I need a drink.